Didn't think we'd be having one of these so soon.
Guess I lied to you in your interview.
That's all right.
Hey Ed, how you doing?
Hey, pretty good. How about yourself tonight?
Hanging in there. You can hear us okay?
Yep, I hear you just fine. I kind of got behind the power curve with some other stuff I was working on. And I figured I'd best attend by Zoom.
Oh yeah, understandable. Let me know if you have any questions about that sheet.
All right.
Items in black are on the agenda. Items in red are just things you say. Sure. So you've been through this before.
Dan at the helm, it'll be fine.
Yeah. I'm expecting we'll have Bill on Zoom, so might just be you two in here again.
We like to show up.
Beautiful day to get out and about. Fall is officially.
It's a little bit.
Yeah. Wherever he normally sits.
He can stay here so we can talk to Mike. Perfect.
Elliot, we have 2 minutes that didn't get approved or brought up last time.
The second one was the other date.
Yeah,
Last year.
I meant to mention,
July 9th.
think so. I put both in front of Danwood. Just like. I'm into. All right.
Don't have Bill yet, so
Wait a few more minutes here.
give the meeting.
Ellie, is this your computer that's up there? I just shared with you a document. I'll have you put up when I'm talking.
Currently waiting for another board member to call in, so sorry for the delay.
There's no sad thing said anything cool. I did not know it said that.
What's that?
Ed's name on this,
No.
it's Eddie Cool. I did not know
I
that.
think that's his real name.
Oh,
I think it is. Well, think it's Edward, but I'm almost certain his real name is Eddie. I'll have to ask him that.
Yes, that is my real name.
It is. Oh, he's
Yeah.
here.
The story behind that, if you're interested. My parents had 7 boys, so they ran out of things to name the last few kids. And there was this band leader that my dad really liked. His name was Eddie Howard. That's my name.
There you go. Well, I know you're listening. I'm glad I didn't say so smart. I'll have to remark about it.
That's okay. I thought I'd interrupt you before you got there. I
Appreciate that.
I didn't want you to be in a rock and a hard place. Anyway. Yeah, it was a nice day today. It was kind of cooler.
Yeah, it was.
That was kind of nice.
If anybody has any derogatory remarks regarding the Nebraska Cornhuskers, though, you can talk to Eddie about that.
Hey, man, I'm fired up about them Cornhuskers. They're going to be playing here.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Be interesting to see how they do this year. Every place Matt Rule's been, the third year is usually like dynamite, you know.
Yeah.
So I hope they have a good season this season. They them Cyclones looked awful good the other day.
Yeah, they did.
Yes, they did. And that was fun to watch.
I texted him and he gave me an ominous reply,
oh,
which I replied to. I'm not gonna read it right now. Wait until he
Coming?
clarifies his statement. In the meantime, I'm gonna text Nicole. Nicole's been dealing with some health issues.
Yeah.
So. It's not, I don't know exactly what it is. It's none of my business, but. Yeah.
Going on vacation? Oh, you weren't in infrastructure this morning.
No, link to that.
Yeah,
Yes,
he's back.
okay. I had sent him. So, stuff to approve, but he's probably just busy. No big deal.
Call him.
Might as well.
Got it going. I asked him if he was okay for the meeting at 6. He said, nope, sorry.
Oh.
So I replied, okay, are you logging on? Maybe, sorry, I'm delayed. For him the best. Hey, Nicole, hope this isn't a bad time. Looks like we might be down Bill for the meeting tonight. He RSVP'd that he would be in, but I don't know that he's. Well, he just texted me that he can call in 5 minutes. Kind of flying by the seat of my pants here. Is there a chance you can zoom in for the meeting, or are you tied up?
I could zoom in. I wasn't prepared to read or anything, so can I just read that part of it?
Yeah, I've got Dan actually being the interim chair. So if you don't mind hopping on the Zoom, that'd be awesome.
Just a minute.
Okay, thanks.
You're fired up.
Yep, I'll hang up here. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Good job, Elliot.
Bill said he can call in 5 minutes, so hopefully he logs in. If we get Nicole, we can start.
Yeah.
If we get Bill, then we'll have the full board. Right, and better.
Take a bathroom break if you need it.
Been doing a lot of talking and therefore a lot of this. Probably gonna have to do that.
Fine weather, man.
Okay. Nicole, can you hear us all right? Nicole, can you test your audio for us, please? Nicole, we're seeing you as muted on our end if you're trying to speak.
I've been working.
Done. All right, Nicole, how about now? How do we feel about putting her on speakerphone on my phone? Through a phone call.
That work, Jim?
I mean, it works as long as she can participate. So, if she can participate, as long as she can hear.
Yep.
And communicate, ask questions, she can do that.
Your phone on the
Like a
dais.
microphone or something.
Is it just not working for her?
I don't know. She's logged in, but her unmute isn't turning off.
There's Bill.
Oh, now
There you are.
I have no idea what happened. I'm so sorry.
You hear us okay?
Yep, I can hear you guys great. I just couldn't talk.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, I guess. You want to stay unmuted and just like run out the cough or whatever? You can do that. Otherwise, we'll rock and roll. We got quorum now, so
Okay.
we can.
Okay, thanks for everybody's patience. Call the meeting to order. It's 6:19 on August 26th, 2025. Larry, could you give us a roll call?
Miller,
Here.
Wood,
Here.
Strobly.
Here.
McLaughlin.
Here.
Okay, we have roll call. Want approval of the agenda presented. Ask for a motion.
Second.
Do you have a second? Looking for a second for the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. We need approval of the minutes from July 28th, 2025 and July 9th, writing it on there. I hope everyone's had an opportunity to review those. That's for a motion for approval. Motion for approval. Second. Looking for a second for that.
Second.
Thank you. Want to welcome everyone here to the Board of Adjustments August 26th meeting. Is there any general statements from the public for non-agenda items? Anybody? If not, we're going to move right into the statement from the city attorney. Have any remarks, Jim?
Okay, yeah, I just, I was asked to come tonight just to talk a little bit about the Board of Adjustment. I don't think I've ever spoke with you guys, and with two variances in front of you tonight, I thought it'd be a good time to just kind of discuss the Board of Adjustment, who they are, what the purpose is. Board of Adjustment is one of the few independent boards that the city has. Other boards like planning, zoning, park and rec, they all are just report to the council, make recommendations to the council. Board of Adjustment is an independent board that makes decisions. Whether they agree with the council or they don't agree with the council, doesn't matter. They are an independent board. The only other independent boards in the city are the library board and the city council themselves. So that's what the board is. One of the duties of the board is to decide what whether variances should be applied. A variance is a granting of relief from a zoning restriction under certain circumstances. It's not a challenge to the application of the zoning code or an interpretation of the code by the zoning administrator. So it's not challenging a zoning administrator's decision. It's a request to allow something that is not in compliance with the code for certain reasons. And that's why it's called a variance. You're allowed to vary from the strict interpretation of the code. Variances and Board of Adjustment actions are addressed by both our own city code and by state common law and state rules. Under our code 175A20, to grant a variation from the terms of this ordinance, then the board would need to find that it's by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property, or whereby reason of exceptional topographical conditions or other extraordinary or exceptional site conditions. The strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance actually prohibits the use of the property in a manner reasonably similar to that of other property in the same district. And when we talk about one of the main things that has to be found when making those findings is that strict interpretation or enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship on the property owner. I've got, Ellie, if you could put up, oh, you already have it up there. Okay.
You can handle that.
Yeah, just got a bunch of work on getting everybody around. So basically getting into that, and this is a result of like code interpretation, United States Supreme Court cases on variances and state law and state Supreme Court decisions on variances. So the first thing to grant the variance, the board has to find that first paragraph, that is a result of the exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property, or whereby reason of exceptional topographical conditions or other extraordinary or exceptional site conditions, the strict application of the terms of this ordinance actually prohibits the use of their property in a manner reasonably similar to that of other property in the same district. So that's one finding that has to be. And if the board finds that, well, then they also have to find that the literal enforcement of the provisions of the ordinance would result in an unnecessary hardship. So you got to find number one, then you got to find an unnecessary hardship. And the unnecessary hardship standard, this is laid out in the Supreme Court, both state and federal Supreme Courts, that an unnecessary hardship is that one, the land cannot yield a reasonable return if used as permitted under the zoning without the variance. Reasonable return is interpreted to show that the property can't be used beneficially without the variance. So the reason why the reasonable return is because a lot of times these end up being under commercial situations where somebody might want to expand their commercial business and make it a lot bigger. And then the question, it's not whether that optimizes the business, it's whether if the strict interpretation of the zoning code allows a use of the property, it's still okay. They're not getting the maximum use does not have to be guaranteed. So it's whether they can return a reasonable return or it can be used without the variance. The hardship results from unique circumstance. You also have to find that. It's not general neighborhood conditions. You need to find circumstances that are not self-created, that these circumstances are unique to this property for some reason. That goes back to even kind of blends with your number one, that topographical or size of the yards or something like that causes the hardship. And then also you have to look at how it affects the neighboring properties, or the proposed use won't change the essential character of the locality. So you look at how big of a deviation it is from the code. You look at whether it would affect neighbors, whether it undermines zoning intent. And it's not a forbidden use. And like forbidden use, it's like, okay, this is a residential area. If somebody wanted to put a commercial property there, this wouldn't be proper variance material. This is already zoned as a proper use. It just doesn't fit because of zoning restrictions. So that's kind of what, you know, the thought process the board should use, not even considering any facts that are before you tonight. And I really haven't studied those that much. Just this is generally would apply to any type of variance that would be in front of you at this point in time. There's several cases that the Iowa Supreme Court has come down with that are kind of famous. And this might be getting too far into the weeds, the Deerdorf case and the Graziano case. And, you know, one thing that they want to make sure, they talk about reasonable return. Hardship exists only when the property greatly decreases or practically destroys its value for any permitted use. Variances are not a substitute for legislative zoning changes. So if you were to find, you know, every time there's a variance, you know, maybe it's more appropriate to go back to the city council and say, hey, can you amend this code? It's not, you know, it's not that it's variance material. It's more maybe the city council should consider amending the code. You know, finally, I think one thing to also consider is like a zoning administrator's role in a variance. Zoning administrator and myself, or, you know, city staff, they've made the decision, but really they aren't here to advocate one way or the other. I mean, this is the board's decision. When they're not an advocate of a yes or no answer here to the board. It's more they're here to provide facts, you know, neutral facts on what has occurred. It's the property owner's burden of proof to come in and convince the board that these standards that you have that are up on the board have been met. So it's not like the zoning administrator is not going to stand up here and make the arguments back and forth. I think you probably, with the summary provided previous to this meeting, you probably have most of the facts that you would need to make the decision as far as factual stuff, but as far as nature of the neighborhood and stuff like that. So that is really the people that would advocate for are the property owners. Okay. Any questions?
Jim, just, I wanted to add to that idea that, you know, the, property owners are here to give their opinion on things and give additional information related to that. We do also send notices out to neighbors and everything, so they have an opportunity to be here as well to provide any perspective they might have. So it is a public hearing, and so those notices do go out. So yeah,
Yeah.
so it's not just the property owners, it's also anybody that was in the city.
And and the reason why I kind of lay out these items is it is important to address these items, because in situations where this would ever be appealed up to a court, because there are Board of Adjustments decisions can be appealed. I don't expect it, you know, hardly ever, but it certainly can get appealed to a court of law. And if those findings aren't present by the Board of Adjustment, the court doesn't make the findings. They're just going to say that there was not enough basis to make this decision. Variance shouldn't be granted. So it also benefits the property owners to thoroughly vet all these issues. Okay.
Anything else?
I have nothing else.
Thank you, Jim and Luke, for those comments. Discussion. We're gonna move on to new business. Open up the public hearing at 6:29. Elliot, could you review the staff report regarding Kyle and Hope Reeves and their setback accessory structures at 4469 Oak Creek Road?
Yes, so basically this is at Oak Creek Drive. That's a typo on my part in the agenda. Yeah, so since this is the first one of these that we've gone through, the only other ones that this group of 4 of you have done is the special use permit. That one was rather straightforward. This one's gonna take a little bit longer for me to get through. I'm basically gonna read staff report. It's about 6 pages. I will be abridging the zoning code language because not all of it is directly applicable to this case. So that's what I need to do in order to maintain legal integrity in this environment. And so I shall begin. We received the request for the zoning variance on August 1st of 2025 for 4469 Oak Creek Drive from the owners of the property, Kyle and Hope Reeves. They're requesting that variance as it relates to a carport adjacent to the house on the lot. The proposed location would not be compliant with the setback regulations for R160 single-family residential zoning, which the property is. We had the notice for this public hearing published in the Des Moines Register last week, and Board of Adjustment gets to intake, as Jim said, the findings of myself as zoning administrator, as well as public comment, followed by rendering a decision. So with this property being located in R1, I tend to put kind of everything for the zoning district that a property seeking a variance has in these staff reports. The thing that we're dealing with mostly is the bulk regulations here. So in the bulk regulations table, R160, that outlines the lot area needs to be a minimum of 7,500 square feet with 60, front yard setback of 30 feet. And then the two that are most important in this case, the side setback of 7 feet and the rear yard setback of 35 feet. Because this is an accessory building, we're also looking at what the required setbacks are for an accessory building. There are two ways that an accessory building can be sited on a residential lot. It can either be at least 10 feet away from the principal building and be 5 feet away from the rear and side property lines, or it can be less than 10 feet from the main building and meet principal building setbacks. So those setbacks that are in that table, if they want to put an accessory building 6 feet from the house, they're allowed to do that, but they would have to abide by the side and rear yard setback as if it were attached to the house. So those are the two ways that a building can be placed as an accessory structure. And I've bolded those in the staff report. That's a rather large paragraph of text that those things are located in, but those are what we're dealing with this request. So I also included the definitions of lot lines. Sometimes with a corner lot, it gets confusing about what is and is not a front, side, and rear lot. With a corner lot, both sides that abut the street are considered front yards. Our code allows either of the opposite yards to be considered the rear lot line, but that decision is made when the house is built. So if you build your house in a location where one side is less than the rear setback allows, it has to be the side setback. In this case, I went ahead and drew on here. So this is the property from an aerial view. So the property, even though the house faces to the south, the rear setback in zoning terms on this lot is the eastern side of the house, because the northern setback is only big enough to be the side. So it's front setback to the west, front setback to the south, side setback to the north, rear setback to the east. Make sense? And I'll stop for questions in a moment. So I also put in those definitions for the lot lines, including the language about either of the lot lines being available, again, depending on how the house is sited, the types of lots that we have. We do have language pertaining to a double frontage lot. That's a specific kind of lot. Technically, a corner lot is double frontage because it has two street frontages. In our code, a double frontage lot refers to a lot bordering a street in the front and in the back, not on a corner, right? So two side setbacks that are located next to private property rather than public street frontage. I also included the yard definitions, which further goes into those definitions themselves for each type of yard, and then some corner lot language, primarily observing that each street frontage shall meet the minimum front setback for the zoning district in which it is located. So as with all of these staff reports, I include the paragraph about the powers and duties of the Board of Adjustment, which Jim just outlined in his statements. The underlined and italicized bit in here being about exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or the shape of a piece of property, or exceptional topographical conditions being the primary reasons that a variance might be granted. Okay. So once again, The request here is to vary from the requirement of the detached accessory structure being located less than 10 feet from the principal structure, being required to observe the principal building setbacks. So this is again 4469 Oak Creek Drive, and I've re-included the summary of the notifications in the paragraph below. Before I go into the site description, are there any questions about the code from either of you two in the room? Bill or Nicole, any questions about code?
No.
Nope.
Okay. So in describing the site, the second set of attachments to the report or the application that we received, including a vicinity map, and then also the building permit and proposed site layout. The permit says gazebo just because that's the construction industry term for the carport that's being proposed. You can see an image of it in one of the attachments here. So that's the structure that we're talking about. The proposal in the site plan was to locate it about within 2 feet of the house approximately, would have placed it about 27 feet from the eastern lot line. So that would be within the required setback by about 9 feet. Couple other site details. The house was built in 1971. So it was built out in the county when Lakewood had not been annexed yet. That goes for a lot of the properties nearby, of course. And then once again, even though the house faces to the south, the way that we define a corner lot is agnostic to that as far as where the rear property line goes. So if the quote unquote face of the house had been to the west, that might make a little bit more sense from an orientation standpoint, but allowing the house to face to the south allows you to build wide. That's something our zone provides a little more liberty on. So in looking at the facts for the zoning interpretation, this is that kind of three-way test that, or I'm sorry, these are just kind of the important talking points from the ordinance. So R160 setbacks, just to recount, front 30 feet, rear 35 feet, side 7 feet. And then I did cardinal direction on those. The zoning ordinance provides that accessory buildings have those two ways they can be sited, either 10 feet or greater from the house with 5-foot setbacks from the rear or side property lines, or they can be closer than 10 feet to the house and meet principal building setbacks. And the other thing I would note about the site is there is enough space for the carport to be located in a spot that would be 10 feet from the house and still meet that 5-foot requirement from the rear and side setbacks. So that would be an acceptable location per the zoning ordinance. Some remarks from the property owners before they get their opportunity to speak. They indicated that miscommunication with a contractor indicated to them that the proposed location would be allowed by right within the city. They also indicated some challenges with the costs of removing some pre-installed footings for the carport and moving the carport to a zoning compliant location would add paving to their project that they did not anticipate. And they also noted to my office that similar structures to the one proposed exist in their neighborhood, and that would mean that they'd be allowed to do this by right. So back to the three-way test that Jim was talking about in his remarks in a slightly different order. So the first thing is just, does the application of the zoning ordinance by its very nature create an unnecessary hardship on the property? The second on our list is, would this approval of a variance have a negative impact on surrounding property owners? And then third, are there any unique site conditions that prevent use of the property in a manner compliant with the zoning ordinance and similar in nature to those around it? So after reviewing the requests and the facts, our main points of emphasis on rationale is that Being within the R160 single family district and with the house sitting in a location currently zoning compliant, the house being 47 feet from the eastern property line, there is enough space for the carport to be built within the compliant zoning location. A 10-foot separation would require to have more paving done on the site. One of the things I wanted to illustrate is that this is kind of the view from the street, the side of the house where the carport would be built, and the driveway they've got currently pretty much goes right up to the house. A little bit of a buffer space there, but the property owners are hoping to utilize the existing driveway to serve the carport, hence the location request. However, from the legal hardship test, if the carport can be located in a zoning compliant place, application of R160 setbacks doesn't create an unnecessary hardship. Secondly, would this be a detriment to nearby property owners? This is a pretty normal piece of construction. It's similar to an accessory garage. It's open air, so that's a little bit different, but it's a residential piece of construction. Nothing about it is super out of the ordinary, and nothing about it would constitute a noxious use. So we don't believe that it would cause any negative impact to surrounding property owners. It's a fairly normal structure. Third is the lot. Does it contain any unique site conditions that make it unusable? Another reason I brought up street view. We don't believe that the site has anything precluding the carport from being located here. There's a little bit of a slope, but all lots have some slope in order to accommodate stormwater drainage, ideally. And so we don't believe that there are unique site conditions making the granting of the variance necessary. So the staff recommendation is for denial, since it only met one of those three questions. I will note that we did receive one piece of correspondence related to this from the neighbor to the northeast. He expressed the view that the setbacks, as outlined in the zoning ordinance, should be maintained. And so his opinion was for denial of this. We had, I believe, and Luke can correct me if I'm wrong, we had somebody stop into City Hall to ask about this, but didn't really express an opinion on it.
It was, so we did hear from the property owner to the east, that's right to the right of the property. She wanted some more information, didn't have a strong opinion, did say that she would prefer it to be not in the middle of the yard, so closer to the house, but, either way, one way or another, she wasn't bothered by the potential carport, so.
So that's the only thing that we had in there. I did put a note at the bottom of the staff recommendation about a past request that we got from somebody nearby. Kind of related, but a little bit different. That was somebody who constructed something without a permit. They came to Board of Adjustment to get a retroactive variance, which was denied. We facilitated the approval of the plat of survey that transferred enough land from the neighbor to that applicant to make their expansion legally compliant. And then we went and performed necessary inspections to make sure that it was up to code. That concludes my staff report. I'm happy to take any questions from the board at this time. If there are none, you can solicit comment from the applicant or any other public on this matter.
Any questions for the board? This time we'll ask for comments from the general public or the applicants.
Do I just say here?
Come up to the podium and state your name and your address, please.
Good evening. My name is Hope Reeves. My husband and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight regarding our variance request for a carport at our home at 4469 Oak Creek Drive. Under current zoning regulations, we have two options to consider when adding a carport to our property. We can attach it to the existing building, but it would have to be 35 feet from the eastern side yard lot line. If attached, it would sit about 27 feet from our neighbor's lot, falling short of that current setback requirement. Our other option is to place a detached carport at least 10 feet from the house to comply with neighboring property variance. Neither option is practical for the house. Neither option is practical for our property. We are therefore requesting a reduction in the accessory building setback requirements to allow the carport to be built near our home without fully attaching it. We respect the purpose and importance of the zoning ordinance and the role it plays in maintaining the character of our community, but we believe our situation meets the city's requirements for a variance consideration under the three-part test. And I'd like to address each of those points directly. First, does enforcing the setback cause an unnecessary hardship? In our case, enforcing the setback creates both economic and practical hardship. We've already invested about $13,000 into this project, including an improved and permitted concrete pad that was poured in compliance with that permit. Unfortunately, due to a language misunderstanding with our contractor, footings for the carport were started under the assumption that placement was compliant. Constructing the carport to meet the 10-foot requirement would mean the current foundation we have in place is unusable for this purpose and would require additional excavation and the pouring of an additional 300 square feet of new concrete and new footings, creating significant unexpected financial strain on our family. Beyond cost, strict application of the current ordinance would also force construction on our children's only safe play area, eliminating our only flat usable green space and requiring the removal of a tree. The alternative side yard slopes significantly to the street and is not usable for family activities. Also to note that side street is pretty busy. There's a daycare right across the street. And so there's just constant traffic. Second, would granting this variance create undue hardship for our neighbors? Granting this variance would not create harm or hardship for our neighbors. The proposed placement is in line with the appearance of our property and will improve curb appeal. It will not block any neighbor's light, airflow, or access, and it faces a public street rather than another home's main living space. We've spoken with our neighbors and they've expressed no objections to the placement, and most have expressed support and view the project as a positive improvement. One neighbor asked that we direct runoff away from his garage, and we're committed to doing so. Third, does our property have unique physical or topographical conditions? Our property does face unique circumstances as our home sits on a corner lot. Under the current code, our eastern side yard is classified as a backyard for zoning purposes, which applies a much larger setback requirement to the side yard that's not imposed on interior lots. As I mentioned, this western side yard slopes significantly toward the street, making it impractical for safe use. Placing the carport along our existing driveway utilizes the already approved foundation, preserves our green space, and is consistent with how other properties in Lakewood make use of their lots. After reviewing Lakewood, we had identified only one other property with the same combination of corner lot restrictions and topography issues at 4645 Wakanda. However, according to the adjuster's website, their lot is approximately 2,000 square feet larger and their home is about 75 square feet smaller. While I didn't measure the distance to their neighboring lot line, it appears their property could potentially accommodate a 2-stall carport or garage while still meeting the approved variance to the neighboring lot and still leave a meaningful amount of green space for their family. It's also worth noting many other corner lot properties in Norwalk either have garages or carports that were granted exceptions to the variance or were built before the current ordinance went into effect. These differences make our situation distinctly unique. Beyond zoning compliance, adding a carport enhances both our family's quality of life and our property's long-term value. Realtors estimate that a well-built carport increases a home's value by 3 to 5%. And makes it substantially more attractive to buyers compared to a home without one. We know firsthand the difference this makes. When we attempted to sell our home previously, the lack of covered parking was the #1 deterrent for potential buyers. While we now intend to stay in our home for several more years, being unable to move forward with this carport could severely diminish our success as sellers when that time comes. In summary, we believe our request meets the city's criteria for a variance. The current ordinance imposes a clear unnecessary hardship both financially and practically. The neighbors are not negatively impacted. And the unique property conditions, both in lot layout and topography, make this the most reasonable and safe placement option. We respectfully ask you to approve this so we can complete this project in a way that maintains the safety and functionality as well as the appearance of our home while preserving the quality of life for our family. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you, Hope. Are there any other comments? The general public or the owners? Okay, we're gonna close the public hearing at 6:51 and we'll call for deliberation and discussion from the board. I have one question for you, Elliot. Talks about approved footings and layout. Is that accurate that the city approved the paving or they approved the footings or what's the story about that?
So the paving was, here, let me open this up. So the applicants asked about paving the driveway expansion to the east of the current driveway and also one to the north of the house. Prior to this request for the carport coming in, those are compliant with the zoning ordinance and I notified them that those would be approved. As for footings for this, those would not have been approved ahead of the issuance of a building permit for a compliant carport.
As I currently understand it, the footings are in place now.
Yes.
So was that submitted as a site plan with those footings shown on there?
So that was the misunderstanding. I had sent our contractor a text asking for like the price for the driveways and the footings. He came out, measured it all. And then when we had talked, I asked him to do the driveways and gave him the permits for that. And it was our understanding just the driveways were being done. We left for our day and came home and the footings were in place as well. Because he had this plan for when he had given us the estimate. So he had that to go off of for the first estimate we got. The language barrier, there was just a misunderstanding on what we had approved for him to go ahead with.
Were the footings inspected by the city at that time?
I do not believe. Go one by one if you want. You can ask the board members if they have.
I think we can ask for general comment from Bill or Nicole, Jacob, anything that need clarification on or understanding beyond this point.
I'm good here.
Okay.
I think my only question is, so what is going to be stored under there? I see the, it looks like a trailer and then the camper. Are those going to remain in the location that they are? And then there's going to be additional vehicles or what's going to be in that area?
So, with the original paving permit that we had, we moved the trailer and the camper to the, northwest. So, yep, the 50 by 10. So those are there. So it's strictly for our cars. It's just protection for our vehicles.
Okay. I think that's all I have.
Any other questions from the board? Clarification? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve or deny.
I guess what I would say is you're not gonna want a motion to deny. It would either be to approve, and if there's no motion to approve, then it fails.
Thanks for that clarification. Do we have a motion? With no motion to approve, then
It would fail for lack of a motion.
lack of a motion. All right. So beyond that, we would not vote, all right?
That's correct.
Correct. So it's
Yep.
done. Yeah. Did not move forward for lack of a motion to approve. Move on to the next item. Public variance request for Caitlin Kelly related to the setbacks for decks, steps, and patios at 815 Kingfisher District. Open up the public hearing. The time is 6:57. I would ask Elliot for a staff report.
Yep, so this is kind of similar in nature to the last one. We got the request for the variance on August 12th of 2025 for the property at 815 Kingfisher Drive. This is on the east side of town in the Brody's Landing development. The request here is to vary from the setback requirements for the construction of some deck steps within the required rear setback area on the lot. That property is zoned R1 single family residential. It's located in a planned unit development. So while we typically see R160, R180, R100, etc. In a PUD, sometimes those setbacks are modified. That is the case with this property. So we sent out those notices and this was published for the public hearing at the same time as the prior item on August 20th of 2025. So getting into the meat of the Brody's Landing PUD land use parcel. So it's land use parcel D. If you're unfamiliar with how a PUD is set up, if you look at a zoning map, you'll see a mosaic of multicolored shapes across a typically a satellite image, sometimes over a blank map. With a PUD, it functions kind of like that. And it assigns a land use parcel letter or number to each polygon. In this case, land use parcel D within the PUD allows for R1 zoning height and bulk regulations with the following modifications. So much like in that size and measurement table for R1, this one applies some custom prescriptive measurements. So lot width, minimum 50 feet, lot depth, 90 feet. The front yard setback in this area can be 25 feet. And we also have a provision for a front porch setback as well that is now ensconced in our typical zoning as well. Side yard setbacks in this zoning district are 5 feet. And then the primary one that we're dealing with here, the rear yard setback of 20 feet. Now, when we look at a deck, we have a section in our standard zoning primary chapter 175A called exceptions and modifications. In the middle of the paragraph on exceptions to yard requirements, we have this statement in bold: uncovered steps, patios, and decks may extend up to 15 feet into any front yard setback area and up to 25 feet into any rear yard setback area, provided a minimum 15-foot setback is maintained. So wherever that setback line in the front or the rear of a property is, at the front, you can go 15 feet into that as long as you maintain 15 feet from the property line on the street side. Same thing in the rear, except you can go up to 25 feet into that rear setback, provided you maintain 15 feet from the rear property line. Because we're dealing with property lines, I included definitions for the front line. That's where you would join the public street right of way. Rear property line being opposite the public street right of way. In the case of this property, it is not a corner lot, so this would be a single choice for the rear property line. The side property lines, of course, would be the remaining two. Setback included the definition of a setback because we're dealing with that, and then also the rear yard, which is the entire width of the yard. The side setbacks on a property are the spaces between the front and the rear yard. So you establish where the front yard is across the entire width of the lot, rear yard, entire width of the lot, side setbacks in between. And then the usual language about the Board of Adjustments, power and duties, which we went over in the last item. So the request here is to vary from that requirement that a set of deck steps be required to maintain an ultimate setback of 15 feet from the rear property line. So this is at 815 Kingfisher Drive. The proposal is to install steps onto an existing deck that would encroach into that 15-foot area. Once again, summarizing the notifications, we sent letters to everybody within 200 feet of this property, notifying of the typo on my part. This is 815 Kingfisher, not Oak Creek Drive. Those letters were sent to the proper people on August 15th. The public hearing was published in the Des Moines Register last week. So I figured it would be a good idea to show the site plan of this house to illustrate the site conditions. So this is the site plan for the house approved in October of 2020. We were all living our best lives that year. It's on the west side of Kingfisher Drive, 25-foot setback illustrated on the east side of the house. The house sits about a foot back from there. In the rear of the home, the separation distance we have to the deck that's on the site plan is 16 feet. So even though the setback is 20 feet for the lot, the deck is allowed to encroach into that, provided it maintain a 15-foot ultimate setback, which it does. So, and then the side setback is not really relevant in this case. As I mentioned, the house is 26 feet from the front and the rear property line. It's pretty much centered east-west. And then that deck is 10 by 10, placing it 16 feet from the rear property line. The proposal from the applicant was to place deck steps an additional 4 feet out from where that was going to be located. And so it's a 4x4, there we go. From the top down, it'd be a 4x4 platform extending out from the existing deck that would bring the deck to a point 12 feet from the rear property line, which is less than the required 15. So that's what the request for the variance is. As far as the zoning review goes, the ordinance has a single statement about where an uncovered set of steps, patios, and decks may extend, maintaining that 15-foot ultimate setback. The Brody's Landing PUD, while it modifies the setback requirements for R1, doesn't say anything about decks, steps, and patios. So therefore, the default language about those would apply. So a couple of remarks that came from the applicant in relation to this request is that because of the location of the deck and their patio and sliding door, installing the deck steps would conflict with the location of the patio and the sliding door as they were installed when the home was built. And then the applicant also remarked on some of the homes in Brody's Landing nearby having their patios side loaded rather than in the middle of the rear of the house, making it easier to build deck steps in a less intrusive way, the way the property was designed. So in the site plan that you see on the screen right now, you can see the deck with the green hatches, patio with the yellow hatches, and the slider coming out into where the patio is. So their remarks were that those things conflict, and which is why they're requesting to build the deck steps where they are. So Three-way test. Would the application of the zoning ordinance regarding setbacks for uncovered steps, decks, and patios create an unnecessary hardship? Would the approval of variance have a negative impact on surrounding property owners? And then does the site exhibit unique conditions preventing the use of the property in a manner compliant with the zoning ordinance? And so looking at that three-way test from the zoning interpretation side, this property is located within a PUD, as I mentioned, so it's not entirely the typical R1 setbacks. Because they had a lower number for the rear setback, it reduces the amount that can be built into with the deck. But that's uniformly applied to all the properties within the PUD. It's not uncommon for PUDs to have those reduced setbacks because it increases affordability. And we all know that with rising housing prices, hitting a more affordable price point is important. Sometimes that comes with spatial consequences such as this. Because that's applied uniformly, we don't think that code language unfairly targets this property versus any others. City doesn't really dictate where a patio or a sliding door goes. That's a thing that gets decided by the builder or the property owner at the time of construction. So that's item number one in the three-way test. Second item, would this have any negative impacts on a neighboring property owner? Well, they're deck steps. Deck steps are a very normal piece of residential construction. No, that would not conflict with neighboring uses at all. The property to the west is zone C4, which is a commercial use. That's a more intense use. So this would not cause undue hardship to that property. And then thirdly, are there any conditions on the lot regarding slope, narrowness, exposure of any sort? And we do not believe so. The property appears to be free of easements that would conflict with use of the property in a compliant manner in the zoning ordinance, which it is currently. So we don't believe that there are unique site conditions requiring the granting of a variance to ensure the property owners can use their lot to its full extent. So the staff recommendation is for denial of the request based on the exhibition of insufficient unnecessary hardship. Steps, and patios are cosmetic. The city doesn't have a requirement that anybody have a patio or a deck or deck steps. There's a lot of decks in town that are just a platform you walk out onto and then interact with the house only and not the rear yard. So given that, I think I've covered all of the facts from the zoning side. I don't believe we had any public correspondence related to this.
I did, Elliot, after the agenda went out, I had a phone call from Mark Othie, who owns a commercial lot
Okay.
to the west of this. He did not have any comment, was not concerned about the request.
Just for context, it's this house right here. And this is that C4 zoned lot that I was talking about. So that concludes my staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions from the board prior to statements from the applicant. And Bill or Nicole, any questions for me?
No comment.
No, I just think, and maybe I missed it. How many steps are there? Like, is it a raised deck or?
It is.
Okay,
Yeah, here's this is the side to side schematic.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions from the board for Elliot? If not, let's move to comments from the applicant. If you'd like to speak, please state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Kelly. I live at 815 Kingfisher Drive. Thank you guys for taking the time to allow me to speak. I apologize, I'm a little bit nervous. So my husband and I moved into this house a little over 4 years ago. Obviously, as you can see, and as was described, it's a walkout home. So we have a second story deck that's obviously pretty high up. Ever since we moved in, we've talked about saving up to put a staircase on our deck. Had no idea that might be an issue just based on where our patio lies. We saw as neighbors started moving in after we did, some neighbors had staircases, just butted out directly from their existing deck. That if we were to do that, it would cover up over half of our patio, just based on where our patio lies. Wouldn't be able to use the patio as it's designed. It would impact the use of our walkout door down there as well. So this was kind of our next thought was, oh, well, we'll just bump out and then the stairs would just lie in front of the patio. Obviously, as was described and as you can tell, we have a very tiny backyard, which is why the setback is an issue. With what we're proposing, we would just be going, the edge of the stairs would lie 12 feet from the lot line versus 15 feet. So 3 feet variance, I guess, is about what we're asking for. We've always talked about wanting a staircase just so that we can, when we put our grill away for the winter, when we bring patio furniture out, we don't have to rearrange things in our home just to get it out through the walkout door of our house. Like we said, a lot of our neighbors have staircases, so it's a pretty standard thing. It's just, as far as our street anyway, we're the only home where the patio is in the middle of our house rather than on one of the sides. If our patio was on one of the sides, this wouldn't be an issue. We could just have a staircase just bumping out from the existing deck. I don't know that it makes a difference. It sounds like the commercial lot behind us didn't have any concerns, but we do have a 6-foot privacy fence. So if there was concerns about the look of the stairs, I mean, we're talking a very standard staircase, but we do have a 6-foot privacy fence in our backyard. I think that our main thing is just that if our only option would be to put stairs bumping out on the north side of the existing deck. And like I said, the stairs would take up a great deal of our patio, and so we wouldn't be able to use the patio as it's designed. So I think that's it, unless you guys have any questions.
Okay, any other discussion or comments from the public? Close the public hearing at 7:13. For deliberation, discussion on the board. Bill, Nicole? So just
No comment. No comment.
Thanks, Bill. Clarification, so the public utility easement is a 10-foot easement.
Yep.
So the zoning requirement is. So it looks like to me there's 6 more feet before you get to that easement. Is that right?
Yes.
So a staircase can be built between the back of the deck and the PU public utility easement? Or is
It needs to be 15 feet from the rear of the property. So
Okay,
the PUE is not,
doesn't come into play.
doesn't come into play here now.
But the homeowner is allowed to build a fence on the property line.
Yep.
But not allowed to build steps.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing nothing, I would entertain a motion. Not hearing a motion. Like a motion does not pass. Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn since we're through the agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Adjourned. Let me kill the Zoom real quick.